You are not living, you are managing. And something deep in you already knows the difference. You know it in the way you wake up and immediately feel the weight of another day before the day has even begun. You know it in the way you answer messages, complete tasks, meet expectations, smile when necessary, speak when spoken to, and keep everything moving, while some quiet part of you stands in the background asking, "Is this really all I am here for?" You are not falling apart. That is the strange part. You are still functional. You still show up. You still do what needs to be done. You still know how to appear normal enough that nobody becomes too concerned. And because of that, people assume you are fine. They see your productivity and call it strength. They see your silence and call it maturity. They see your emotional control and call it peace. But they do not see what it costs you to keep performing a life that no longer feels alive from the inside. Carl Jung understood this better than almost anyone. He understood that a person can build a successful outer life while slowly losing contact with their inner one. He understood that the mask we wear to survive can become so convincing that even we forget there is a face beneath it. And he understood something even more uncomfortable. The moment a person begins to wake up from that false life, the world around them often does not celebrate. It resists. Because the version of you that is functional but not alive is useful. It is predictable. It is agreeable. It does not disturb the room. It does not ask dangerous questions. It does not make people uncomfortable with truth. But the version of you that is alive, that version cannot always be managed. That version begins to feel where it has been lying. That version starts to notice the difference between peace and numbness, between responsibility and self-abandonment, between being loved and being used. And once you notice that difference, you cannot unsee it. There is usually a moment when it begins. Not a dramatic moment, not a breakdown, not a movie scene, something smaller. You are sitting in a meeting or at a family table or in a conversation with friends, and someone asks you what you think. For years, you would have given the safe answer, the answer that kept things smooth, the answer that protected everyone from discomfort. But this time, something in you is tired, not angry, just tired. Tired of editing your truth into something easier to digest. So you say what you actually think. Not cruelly, not aggressively, just honestly. And the room changes. Only slightly, but you feel it. A pause that lasts half a second too long. A smile that becomes tighter. Someone looks down at their plate. Someone changes the subject too quickly. Someone says, "Interesting," in a tone that does not mean interesting at all. Nobody attacks you directly. Nobody says, "How dare you become honest?" But warmth leaves the room. And you know it. Later, you replay the moment. You ask yourself if you said too much, if your tone was wrong, if you were being difficult, if you should have stayed quiet. And maybe you apologize even though no one asked you to. Maybe you soften what you said. Maybe you try to return to the old version of yourself, the version that knew how to keep everyone comfortable. But something has already shifted. Because for one moment you did not perform. For one moment, the mask slipped. And the strange thing is, you did not feel guilty at first. You felt alive. That is what confuses you. The honesty that created distance also gave you energy. The truth that made people uncomfortable made something inside you breathe. And this is where most people misunderstand what is happening. They think the problem is rejection. They think the problem is that they became too intense, too cold, too honest, too quiet, too distant, too different. But often, the real problem is not that you changed for the worse. The real problem is that you stopped playing your assigned role. Every group has hidden agreements. Every family has them. Every workplace has them. Every friendship circle has them. They are rarely spoken out loud, but everyone knows them. You are allowed to be honest, but not too honest. You are allowed to grow, but not beyond the group's comfort. You are allowed to suffer, but only in ways people know how to manage. You are allowed to have boundaries, as long as those boundaries do not inconvenience anyone who benefited from your lack of them. And for a long time, you may have obeyed these agreements without realizing it. You became the calm one, the helpful one, the understanding one, the one who does not complain, the one who absorbs tension, the one who keeps the peace, the one who can be counted on to abandon themselves quietly so that everyone else can stay comfortable. That role may have looked noble. It may have even felt like love. But if you had to disappear inside it, it was not love. It was a contract. And the day you begin to break that contract, People do not always say you are becoming yourself. They say you have changed, and they say it like an accusation. Carl Jung called the social mask the persona. The persona is the version of you that knows how to function in the world. It is not evil. It is necessary. You need a persona to work, to communicate, to belong, to cooperate with society. But the danger begins when the persona becomes your whole identity. When the mask is no longer something you wear, it becomes something you obey. And this is how people enter the mode that keeps them functional but never truly alive. They become excellent at appearing okay. They become fluent in acceptable answers. They become experts at managing impressions. They build a life that looks stable from the outside, while their inner life quietly starves. Jung believed that whatever we reject from consciousness does not disappear. It goes into the shadow. Most people hear the word shadow and think only of darkness, anger, envy, shame, fear, desire. But the shadow does not only contain what is ugly, it also contains what was too alive to be accepted. Your confidence may be there. Your creativity may be there. Your anger may be there. Your real yes and your real no may be there. Your wildness, your voice, your hunger, your sensitivity, your courage, your capacity to leave, your capacity to begin again. All the parts of you that were punished, mocked, ignored, or misunderstood did not vanish. They went underground. And if you live too long without them, you can still function. But you cannot feel whole. That is why the deadness feels so strange. It is not always depression. It is not always laziness. It is not always burnout. Sometimes it is the pain of being separated from your own life force. You are tired because the version of you doing the living is not the whole of you. You are exhausted because the mask is consuming energy that the soul needs to create, to love, to choose, to risk, to become. And this is where the exit begins, not by destroying your life, not by running away, not by becoming reckless. The exit begins when you start noticing the places where you are functioning at the cost of your aliveness. The first sign is that your life works, but it does not reach you. You can complete the day, but the day does not touch you. You can sit in conversations, but you feel far away from them. You can achieve things, but the achievement lands flat. People congratulate you, and you know you should feel something, but inside there is only a small, quiet distance. This is not ingratitude. It is information. Your psyche is telling you that outer success and inner truth have separated. You are not ungrateful for what you have. You are becoming aware that what you have cannot replace who you are. And that awareness is painful because it threatens the story you have been using to keep going. The second sign is that rest no longer restores you. You sleep but wake up tired. You take a day off but still feel heavy. You distract yourself, but the emptiness returns the moment the noise stops. That is because the exhaustion is not only physical, it is existential. You are not just tired from doing too much. You are tired from being too little of yourself while doing it. A person can recover from hard work. It is much harder to recover from constant self-betrayal. Every false yes takes energy. Every swallowed truth takes energy. Every forced smile takes energy. Every moment you pretend not to know what you know takes energy. And eventually, the body starts refusing to fund the performance. Third sign is that you begin to envy people who seem free. Not because their lives are perfect, but because something in them appears unhidden. They speak with a directness you lost. They create without apologizing. They leave situations you would have endured. They say no without writing a speech to justify it. And something in you reacts. Sometimes admiration, sometimes irritation, sometimes sadness. That reaction is not random. Jung would say you are meeting your own unlived life in another person. You are not jealous of them. You are recognizing a part of yourself that has been waiting for permission. The fourth sign is that your old identity starts to feel like a costume. You still know how to wear it. You know the tone, the habits, the jokes, the responsibilities, the role. But it no longer feels like skin. It feels like clothing that has become too tight. People may still respond to you as if you are the same person. But inside, you know something has moved. You cannot fully explain it yet. But you know you are no longer available for certain performances. You no longer want to be the emotional container for everyone else. You no longer want to be praised for your ability to endure what is slowly killing you. You no longer want to be the person who is easy to love because they ask for nothing. And when this happens, people may call you distant, but you are not becoming distant from life. You are becoming distant from the false version of yourself that life once required. The fifth sign is that silence becomes more honest than conversation. You start noticing how many conversations are not real conversations. They are performances of closeness. People speak but do not reveal. They ask but do not want the truth. They listen, but only for the version of you they can recognize. And once you see this, you become quieter. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer want to spend your life translating your soul into language that protects other people from depth. This kind of silence is not emptiness. It is protection. It is the psyche pulling its energy back from places where it is not received. And for a while, that silence may feel lonely. But it is also the first space where your real voice can begin to return. The sixth sign is that boundaries feel like betrayal. At first, when you start saying no, your nervous system may panic. You may feel selfish, cold, cruel. You may feel an urge to explain yourself until the other person approves of your boundary. But a boundary that requires approval is not yet a boundary. It is still a negotiation with fear. Many people do not struggle with boundaries because they lack strength. They struggle because they were trained to experience self-protection as guilt. If love always required you to be available, then distance will feel like violence. If belonging always required self-erasure, then honesty will feel like danger. But guilt is not always a sign that you did something wrong. Sometimes guilt is the withdrawal symptom of abandoning an old role. The seventh sign is that you stop wanting to be understood by everyone. This is one of the deepest shifts. When you are living through the persona, you need recognition from the outside. You need people to confirm that you are good, acceptable, reasonable, lovable. But as you move closer to the self, something changes. You still care, but you no longer build your identity around being correctly interpreted by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You begin to realize that explaining yourself to people who benefit from your confusion is another form of captivity. So you stop over-explaining. You stop defending every decision. You stop giving long emotional presentations to people who only want your old obedience back. And this does not make you arrogant. It makes you free. The eighth sign is that you begin choosing truth over comfort. And this is where the real transformation becomes unavoidable, because comfort is seductive. Comfort says, just go back. Comfort says, do not make this complicated. Comfort says, at least the old life was familiar. But truth says, familiar is not the same as alive. Truth says, you can survive there, but you cannot become there. Truth says, the peace you are protecting may only be the silence of your own disappearance. Every person who exits functional mode reaches this threshold. Do I keep the life that keeps everyone comfortable? Or do I begin the life that finally includes me? There is no painless answer, because becoming more aware has a price. You may lose people, not always through dramatic conflict, sometimes through slow distance, slower replies, fewer invitations, awkward conversations, a strange coldness where warmth used to be. You may realize that some relationships were not built on love, but on access. Access to your time, your attention, your emotional labor, your silence, your willingness to understand everyone while almost no one tried to understand you. And when that access changes, the relationship changes. That hurts, even when it is necessary. Do not let anyone make this sound easy. It is painful to discover that some people only liked the version of you that made their life easier. It is painful to become honest and watch people call it attitude. It is painful to become calm and watch people call it coldness. It is painful to stop chasing and realize how many connections were only alive because you kept reviving them. There is grief in waking up, because you do not only lose illusions about others, you lose illusions about your past. You see all the moments you betrayed yourself to stay chosen. You remember the times you made yourself smaller and called it maturity. You remember the rooms where your body knew the truth before your mouth was allowed to say it. You grieve the years when you were present for everyone except yourself. But grief is not the opposite of transformation. Grief is part of it. It is what the soul feels when the old contract is finally being broken. And if you keep going, something begins to change. Not loudly, not all at once, but steadily. You become calmer, not because life becomes easier, but because you stop negotiating with everything that pulls you away from yourself. You become harder to manipulate, not because you become suspicious of everyone, but because your need for approval no longer makes every person powerful over you. You become more selective. Not because you think you are better than others, but because you finally understand that your energy is a life force, not a public resource source. You become less reactive because you no longer confuse every provocation with an emergency. You begin to recognize that some people only know how to feel powerful when they can make you lose your center. And when you stop giving them that reaction, their power has nowhere to land. You become more loyal to yourself. This is not selfishness. This is inner order. For years, you may have been loyal to peace, to image, to expectation, to being needed, to being liked, to not causing pain. But now you begin to ask a different question. What would it mean to stop abandoning myself in order to belong? And that question changes everything. It changes who gets access to you. It changes what you tolerate. It changes how quickly you notice manipulation. It changes the way you walk into rooms, because you are no longer entering as a performance waiting to be approved. You are entering as a person who has returned to themselves. This is not superiority. It is sovereignty. You are not becoming better than people. You are becoming less available to everything that makes you false. Less available to chaos disguised as love. Less available to guilt disguised as duty. Less available to criticism disguised as concern. Less available to relationships that require your silence as the price of admission. And slowly, life begins to feel different. Not perfect, real. You may still have responsibilities. You may still have difficult days. You may still feel fear. But there is one enormous difference. You are there. You are no longer watching your life happen from behind glass. You are no longer performing calm while quietly disappearing. You are no longer mistaking numbness for peace. You are beginning to live from the inside out. That is what Jung meant by becoming whole. Not becoming flawless, not becoming constantly happy, not becoming untouched by pain. Wholeness means the rejected parts turn, the voice returns. The anger returns as boundaries. The desire returns as direction. The sensitivity returns as intelligence. The solitude returns as self-contact. The shadow is no longer running your life from underground because you have finally turned toward it and listened. So if you have been feeling this strange deadness, do not rush to shame yourself. Do not immediately call yourself lazy, ungrateful, broken, or dramatic. Maybe something in you is not trying to destroy your life. Maybe it is trying to return it to you. Maybe the exhaustion is not proof that you are weak. Maybe it is proof that the false version of you has reached its limit. Maybe the silence inside you is not emptiness. Maybe it is the space where your real voice is waiting to be heard. You were not crazy for noticing the distance. You were not wrong for sensing the coldness. You were not imagining the way people changed when you stopped playing the role they preferred. And you were not failing because the life that once worked no longer feels alive. That is not failure. That is awakening. The pain had meaning. It was the pressure of the self pushing against the walls of a life built too small. It was the hidden truth beneath your tiredness. It was the part of you that refused to let functioning become your final form. So begin with one honest act, one real no, one real yes, one conversation where you do not abandon yourself, one quiet decision to stop performing a life that does not include your soul. You do not have to burn everything down. You only have to stop lying to yourself about what is already burning, because you were not born just to manage. You were not born just to be useful. You were not born just to survive in a shape that keeps everyone else comfortable. You were born to become whole. And the moment you choose truth over performance, something in you will recognize the way home. You did not become cold. You became unavailable to the things that were draining you. You did not become difficult. You became harder to control. You did not lose yourself. You finally stopped abandoning yourself. And that is how you exit the mode that kept you functional, but never truly alive.